Very good evening, everyone. Welcome to today's session of Ayurveda Dietetics. And as you all know, that we are going to discuss about the Ayurveda Dietetics today. It's Dhanteras today, and as we all know that during the Samudra Manthan, the Lord Dhanwantari was came out with the Amrit Kalash in his hand. And that Amrit Kalash is referred to be the Kalash which has all the goodness in all the ways, including your good health, a lot of wealth. So mostly we focus on the Diwali about the Lakshmi, but actually the health is the real wealth. So today we thought of doing this session in order to, give you all that insight of how a good health can, in fact, and how Ayurveda is a core of, Hinduism or Sanatan from the very ancient time. Ayurveda has been practiced by everyone to cure the diseases, to uh, you know uh, prevent the diseases these days when the India is leading as a diabetic capital of world. And also there are a lot of health related issues which we see on the regular basis, obesity and a lot of other unanswered questions in the health field. So today we have Dr. Madhumita, with whom we are going to discuss all these details. So Dr. Madhumita Krishnan is a consultant Ayurveda pediatrician and CAPPA certified childbirth educator based in Bangalore. Works as a consultant with CABHN TDU Bangalore and runs a program on introduction to Ayurveda dietetics and advanced Ayurveda dietetics. Work as a consultant pediatrician at multiple centers in Bangalore and Hyderabad, holding cases of a special children's with an excellent track record of improving their quality of living. Works as a at KYM Chennai. And I would like to have Dr. Madhumita. Hello,
Good
Dr.
evening,
Madhumita.
everyone.
Yeah.
Hello.
Welcome to a live session on Ayurveda dietetics. So here is a Ayurvedic Vedya and one dietitian, and I have worked with Dr. Madhumita. She has a and actually have attended her class also, and I think for past 4 years after doing my advanced Ayurveda dietetics, I have applied it in my practice and have been immensely benefited both for myself as well my clients. So over to you, Dr. Madhumita. Uh,
Thank you so much for doing this on, I think, Ayurveda Day. And when we are talking about Ayurveda dietetics, having two perspectives to that, the diet perspective as well as Ayurveda definitely makes a lot of sense. So,
yes,
looking forward to the session.
yeah. So I'll can we have the slides, please? Can we have the slides, please? So as we all know that there is a difference between the only Ayurveda as well as the dietetic Ayurveda dietetics. Can you please help me with the slides? Yeah. So as it's a National Ayurveda Day, and we just discuss about the Ayurveda. So basically, as a dietitian, what we actually talk about or practice about is more about the calorie, energy, proteins, fats, and balanced diet and stuff. Also, when we get into therapeutic nutrition, we also talk about taking the clients or patients' history, doing a lot of supplements, enteral nutrition. But when we follow the Ayurveda dietetics, basically we see the prakriti of individual, all the dosha, what is the kal, what is the bal, and agni of an individual, and based on that do a lot of modification in order to achieve. So I have a small example for here, where I have taken green moong dal and goat meat, which is both 20 grams of weight. And if you see that moong dal has 4.776 grams of protein, whereas the goat meat has 4 grams of protein again. But if you see the the properties based on how we study in the Ayurveda dietetics, there is a lot of difference. So I would just request Dr. Madhumita also to throw some light on the, while we choose with the perspective of Ayurveda. And definitely in my practice, when I follow these things and try to modify the nutritional pattern of my clients, I get a lot of benefits. So would you like to put a little bit of light on this, vegetarian versus non-vegetarian sources of protein?
Okay, so first of all, in Ayurveda, there's no concept of carbohydrate, protein, or fat,
Correct.
but it is considered as ahara or food that nourishes you. Now, when we talk about nourishment, it is not only to I mean, the physical body as we call it, but also to our mind, right? So it also is an experience which we are having when we put something into our mouth and we're chewing on it and we're digesting it, etc. So there was really, I would not say a concept of differentiation. I mean, surely they did say there were animal based foods, there were plant based foods, etc. And all of that was described in terms of how our body reacts to it. For example, when we have a mutton curry, the kind of experience which the body has would be very different from if you have a moong curry. The For example, if I were to take the experience itself, both of them, yes, as you've mentioned here, is primarily sweet. But with the moong dal, you would see that probably you need a little more to achieve that kind of fullness which you get with probably having half a cup of the mutton curry. So that is what is termed as the gunas, or the effect that you experience on your body, the heaviness or the lightness which you've mentioned as the qualities here. Similarly, the stickiness and the oiliness which you naturally see in meat is quite lacking in a moong dal, which you have to soak, and then the methodology of cooking is also different. So that experience also, if you don't put enough fat in a moong dal curry, you'd probably feel a lot more dry. What many people will say is, I feel like, even though they may not understand that terminology, they'll be like, my vata has gone up, or I'm feeling bloated, I'm feeling distended. They may not use the term vata, but they'll say, I'm feeling bloated, distended, etc. But this experience which it comes from, like a mutton curry, may not be so. It will be something more, I'm feeling very full, I'm feeling very heavy. I think it's going to take a little more time for me to digest. I don't seem to, you will not have that feeling of dryness which you get from that moong dal. So these concepts of, even some people talk about how they feel a lot more heat when they have meat, versus they find it more cooling when they have like a moong dal. So those experiential learning is what we call as the rasa panchaka, or the primary ways through which we can describe foods. And it is based on, at some level, the sensorial appreciation and the experience that the body has when we are eating the food.
Correct. So now my next question is, like, a lot of Ayurvedic clinics, or these days a lot of Ayurvedic centers are coming up. So they do a lot of this kriya called Panch Karma. So would like to understand and how it helps in improving, the health, and if you can just brief us about the Panch Karma.
Absolutely. So the first, I think, myth which most people associate with panchakarma is that it is this relaxing procedure where you lie down on the table and you have like this warmed oil which is like massaged into you, and then many people consider what we call as a shirodhara as a panchakarma. So first of all, I would like to say that panchakarmas are not those. Those are the preliminary steps for achieving a panchakarma procedure. So the Panchakarma procedure are five in number. You may have heard of these terms. It's very commonly utilized, as you said, in many Panchakarma clinics. These are called Vamana, which is a kind of emesis where they induce vomiting using medications. Virechana is a kind of introducing diarrhea or a cleansing, which happens in the form of diarrhea. Then you have what is called Nasyam, which is an application of um, drops. It can be oil, it can be kashayam through the nose. Sometimes it's called as a Arhain therapy. Then you have two types of bastis, which many people consider as the last two types of panchakarma, which is a type of medicated enema. Some people also do what is called rakta mokshana, which is very loosely translated to venesection, where it's a type of bloodletting therapy which is done, and that's also many types. So I think the first time most people decide to do an actual panchakarma, it's a bit of a shock for them. But I must tell you that it is a experience, and people feel a huge difference in their body, their metabolism, once they undergo a panchakarma. So the panchakarma is meant to purify or cleanse your body and basically remove, you could say, not the, like, it's not that we have dirt inside that, but it's just that over a period of time, there is some form of impurities, toxins, which tend to
Toxins.
develop inside our body. And many people will say, oh, I want to undergo this detox. So it is not equivalent to detox, but definitely it is something which once you undergo it, when you're doing it, you're going to be like, why am I doing this to myself? It is not worth it. But the experience that you get post that is just amazing. We work with so many cases of, I've worked with children, I've worked with adults, and sometimes I feel it is easier working with children because they actually, listen, as compared to adults who find it a little more difficult. But having said
Mhm.
that, with the people who have actually done like a panchakarma therapy, as I'm saying, when they're doing the process, they're like, why am I doing this? It's very difficult, etc., etc. But literally 1 month later, they'll be like, can we do it again? Because the experience which you get, that lightness, that feeling of health, as you were mentioning, health as well, absolutely. When you feel that kind of energy which comes within you after doing a panchakarma is just fantastic. But I must tell you that it has to be done under a Vaidya's guidance because there are many permutations and combinations. Not everyone can do all panchakarmas. So to say, okay, someone suggested that I do this at home, so I've just taken this medication and I think I'm capable of doing it by myself. I don't need someone's help. I would refrain from doing so because there can be many complications that come out of that. So we have to be careful, and it is there are even certain specific seasons at which it has to be done. Not everybody can do it at every time, and not all panchakarmas are suited for everybody. So even
And
each procedure can be done in a different way. So that's why it's a fantastic procedure and a fantastic experience, but it has to be done under the proper guidance. Otherwise, it can go very wrong.
okay, and also I wanted to understand if it is preventive thing, or is it treatment, like we do a preventive nutrition or treatment. So how which stage? So as you have said that detoxification or toxins are removed, so it can be done for both, or is there certain diseases or certain conditions that we should prohibit doing the panchkarmas?
That's a very good question. So it is utilized for both in the sense that there is a preventive form of panchakarma which is done every season as we go through. There is a change which happens within our body. We experience it in the form of energy changes, our digestive, like we don't feel as hungry in certain seasons and we can eat a lot
Correct.
in other seasons, and we feel we get indigestion more easily in specific seasons, etc. So, and also obviously we're going to feel more hot in certain seasons, we're going to feel more cold in certain seasons, and all of this is having an impact on the physiology of our body. So Ayurveda terms this in terms of what we call as the tridoshas, the vata, pitta, and kapha, basically to
Mhm.
say that when you see certain symptomatic changes within you, you can understand that that dosha has gone high. One of the easiest examples which I can probably relate to is something like the spring season, where all of us tend to get a lot more respiratory issues as compared to
Correct.
any other time, right? And the
Mhm.
reason probably for that is because there's a naturally high kapha dosha which is happening at that time. So,
Mhm.
since the classical texts, or we see that there is a natural change which is happening within our body, they do talk about specific seasons to prevent the high of the doshas which happen. Like, for example, right now in the Deepavali season, many of us have this habit of applying oil, having like a bath, and you'll be like, oh, it's Deepavali, that's why we are doing this. The
Uh-huh.
reason is actually the pitta is naturally very, very high during this season. So it's a way in which you're setting that right. So, like that, the Virechana is a perfect therapy which should be done during this season to prevent or prevent the pitta from increasing too much. Now, that is one aspect of it. Not everybody has the time. And honestly, I don't think even us Ayurveda doctors are following that preventive panchakarma on a yearly basis. But because by the time you finish one, it'll be time to go for another one, right? So
Another.
there is the treatment aspect of it, where we say that in case we see a disease condition where the pitta dosha is very high, the kapha dosha is very high, then these are therapies through which we are able to help them. Now, there are obviously disease conditions where there are a combination of doshas. For example, something like hypothyroidism. There was a study which was done where we did panchakarma therapies in that, and we found good improvement. Similarly, something like even diabetes, where to start it off, you can do certain panchakarma therapies to kind of improve the metabolism, set the system right. So it is easier when you give a diet, etc. So now when I do work with certain dietitians, what we are seeing is if we do that initial cleanse and we kind of set the system right, then the person finds a huge difference in how they're able to utilize the diet, how what effect they see in themselves, etc. Right? So it is also used at a therapeutic benefit. Now there are certain
Correct.
people, as you mentioned, who should not do it at all. For example, people who are pregnant, definitely no. Young children, unless and until the Vaidya is on board and knows how to change it for a child, even though I said I do it in pediatrics, it is changed a lot. And obviously, it has to be simplified. In a child, it cannot be done as much as in an adult. Similarly, a person who is on their menstrual cycle is not advised to do it. A very old person cannot do it. So, depending upon age, climate, state of the body, not everyone can undergo a panchakarma. So that assessment has to be done before we are able to give it to them.
Correct. Thank you. So now next is the ghee. So we talk about a lot ghee these days as a superfood, and it can be, and there are so-called some celebrity nutritionist or so-called quacks. So they just say that have as much ghee as and keto diet for that matter like is not done, and high fat diets are so much in these days. So I just wanted to ask you, and I have done a session on ghee as well with the TDU itself. So that was a very intense session, but for our audience to know in brief, like I know that there's a specific way of making ghee in Ayurveda and what ghee we get outside. Even the Tirupati laddu ghees are supposed to be like a lot of controversy around. So, what is your suggestion, and how much should be the daily intake? Like we restrict for that different person as per the personalized nutrition. If anyone is having cholesterol, what is the age, what is the physical activity, which is the different criteria. So, how is it in Ayurveda? And would you like to share the Ayurveda way of making ghee so our audience can really make the right ghee, if they are doing some therapeutic ghee, if you can just help us with that.
Okay, so I think as part of the TDU session, you may have also seen that they did find, irrespective of wherever the ghee was coming, it did have fantastic benefits. But
Correct.
ideally, the methodology which is explained is where, the milk which you get, you convert it into curd, and in the fermentation process, basically the cream is collected on top of the curd, and you allow it to ferment, and then you churn the curd with the cream and water, and the fat, you churn it nicely till the fat or the butter comes out, and that butter you melt, and then you have that as ghee. So that is the ideal process which is explained, but it takes a little bit of an intense work which you have to do to attain that, and not everyone may have the time to do that, honestly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so there are, I would say, commercially available ghees are a go-to for many people. Now the main difference between those two, which again was something which was identified by TDU, by the basically the processing methods, etc., they found that the major processing step which was missing is the fermentation, where
Correct.
when you do it at home, you're allowing it to ferment, and that naturally changes the state of the ghee. So any ghee which we are talking about, which is to stimulate the digestion, helpful in what we call as a yogavahi effect, or anything which you add with ghee, it has the ability to uptake those properties and add benefit to it, right? So that's the advantage of adding the ghee to anything. So those are the properties which are of that fermented ghee. But even the other one, which is not fermented and the fat is just extracted and you melt and make the ghee, you can do one step to make it more suitable for the individual if it's not possible to make it, the way which I explained at home, which is there is a traditional practice in most homes that when you make ghee, you'll put a panka patta, or you'll put a little bit of pepper in it, or you'll put some moringa leaves in it, etc.,
Mhm.
while you process it. So that I think is a very important step to, even if you're not able to do the fermentation process, at least to stimulate the aspects of the ghee, because it's going to take up the active principles beautifully of whatever you're melting it in.
Right.
So that may be something which may be simple, where you just take the ghee at home, and as
Mhm.
you're just like melting it, you put either the panka patta, etc., and that attribute is added into the ghee, and obviously that you can eat with your food. Now, coming to quantities, that is one major issue. Obviously, ghee is good. It does not mean you can just have ghee as the major meal. It is a part of a meal. It definitely changes from. So, ghee is suggested to be given right from 6 months when you start weaning a child, rather, complementary
Correct.
feeding. I should not use the word weaning at that time. When you start
Mhm.
complementary feeding itself, you can start adding ghee into the food, and of course the quantity will change as you grow up. So at that
Grow.
time, the quantity which they are talking about is probably like a drop or two drops to begin with, and you can go up to quarter teaspoon maximum, right? But then once you get into the adult age, um depending upon the situation, now there are people who have a lot of issues with their lipid profiles, etc., and they
Correct.
are worried with regards to taking ghee. And when Ayurveda says, oh, you take ghee, they'll be like, how can we take ghee if it's going to have more of a negative impact, right? And
Correct.
I think that's where your question also came from, in the sense that
Yes.
how much is okay. So I would say definitely maximum 1 teaspoon per meal is okay. And I'm talking about 3 meals in a day, not people who
Correct.
have like 6 or 7 or 8. So one
Correct.
teaspoon in each meal, as in maximum 3 teaspoons in a day. Now, in case they have very, very high, some people are there who probably you've also worked with, they come with
Mhm.
like very high
High
cholesterol levels,
cholesterol.
very high. Yeah, which is in those cases, I would suggest probably you start with half and see how they're able to take it, and then maybe you can increase it, etc. But the point is, there is no standardized statement to say that this is the quantity of ghee that you need to give.
Quantity,
It
correct,
has to
correct.
be dependent upon the individual.
Personal,
Ghee is
yeah.
very beneficial, yes, very personalized, very individualized. And ghee is also, we have it in medicated forms, you have it in non-medicated forms. The non-medicated form is what I'm talking about, which you add into food. The medicated form
Correct.
of ghee naturally has or imbibe the properties of the medications that are added into it, or the herbs which are added into it. So that will have benefits based on what the Vaidya is looking for. We have many different
Correct.
types of ghee, and we give it for conditions such as anemia. We give it for conditions
Mhm.
like skin conditions, like severe eczema or even
Mhm.
psoriasis. So the kind of herbs which are added into it can change the benefit of the ghee that it has on the individual.
So basically, it should be taken in the quantity that is prescribed as per individual and should not be overdone. Many a times I see people coming it, they are just having ghee because ghee is good, so they are eating too much of ghee, cooking ghee, everything. They are that frying ghee, or doing everything with the ghee and coming up with lot of health issues. So definitely ghee is good, but it has to be taken in a restricted quantity or personalized, or a as per recommendations only it should be taken. So coming to the next question, Indian spices. So during the COVID time, that a lot of immunity thing was talked about, and I think our turmeric and pepper and our Indian spices were top of the chart. And then I think turmeric golden latte and things were the you know everybody was fan about. They had their own personal fan base. So what is your take on the Indian spices in terms of immunity as well as in the gut? So as we know that turmeric and pepper combination, and please.
Yeah. So, I definitely feel spices are a very important component in one's diet. It is, there was a very interesting paper which was shared. I think as part of the course, you would have also seen, we'd had discussed
Yes,
that, where
yes,
basically, when you do have spices in a specific amount, again, not too much, because then there were cases where people were getting lead poisoning. There were issues, obviously, with burning sensation if you're going to overdo the pepper, etc. So,
correct.
yes, spices are important. Again, quantity and the way in which you use it is very important. But as such, any spice, a whole masala dabba which we have in our house, is just a fantastic, I would say, kitchen pharmacy which is there,
Correct.
because
Yes,
in Ayurveda, very clearly, the understanding which we have is most diseases, or practically you could say 90 to 95% of the diseases, start from the gut, right? So
correct.
any disease condition, and present day, at least most cases, I would say, in most of the cases that I deal with, the minute I set the gut right, they see the difference immediately, because that's the
Correct.
level to which the gut is getting affected for whatever reason. So
Correct.
spices are a great way in which we can improve gut health, no doubt about that. It definitely, I there have been different studies which have been done on specific spices to basically understand the effect that it has on our body.
Mhm.
People know that it improves the digestion, probably by improving the effect of an enzyme or acting as an adjuvant to that, which helps in achieving that. So not sure exactly how that is, that was not explained there, but the point is, the it definitely is able to reduce inflammatory markers, it's able to stimulate the process of metabolism, etc., which is there in the understanding of Ayurveda too. So in that way, it helps in gut health. And immunity, when we talk about, is uh, a, it complements the gut health, in the sense that if the gut health is good, then naturally the immunity also tends to be good. Now,
Correct.
everyone is focusing on gut health. There have been gut health clinics which have been opened up
Correct.
to say that, okay, let's keep the gut healthy. And
Correct.
I think mental health, which has also become a major component post COVID is something which can be addressed by setting the gut right. And they call that the gut brain axis, right?
Access,
Similarly,
yes.
I'm sure now we're going to talk about gut and immunity in another way, where for us it's very simple. In Ayurveda, we say if you set the digestion right, then automatically the assimilation improves. And the last step of that is immunity. So if you
Correct.
are able to process and digest the food which you eat properly, automatically immunity is going to be a plus step which is going to happen. So
Correct.
specifically talking about turmeric and pepper, absolutely they are important in an individual, but here again it depends on the individual. Not everybody can have turmeric and pepper kacha like
Correct.
that. It will not suit them, especially people who have a pitta dominant prakriti. We see that the turmeric tends to irritate them because it is hot in nature. Most spices are hot in nature. You have a few like something like elaichi or coriander seeds which are a little cooling in nature. Otherwise most spices tend to be hot in nature, right? And that is why they're very good on the digestive process. That's not
Correct.
a negative, but the point
Yeah.
is how they therefore have to be used in the individual is very, very careful. So specifically in COVID, the latte which you were talking about, the reason is when you boil the turmeric and pepper in milk, it definitely has a positive benefit on you. And it is not
Correct.
going to increase the heat also because you're boiling it in milk. But if someone cannot have it in milk, I would suggest please add the ghee, which was our previous question, at least to balance it out.
Correct, correct. And also, recently there was a lot of talk about, the FSSAI taking action against certain brands. And I feel that they are too much of, don't you think that the abuse, spices are also abused with a lot of, that is also causing some extent the gut issues these days? And, a lot of, the use of spices. And I think that previously mothers used to cook and the spices and were quite expensive, so I feel that they were not so much used. These days what I feel is like the kitchen is full of so much of spices and everyone has cook, so the cook is coming and putting it in any amount and making it, taste worthy and all. So do you feel that, isn't it the rasa and the ama of the gut will be affected because of that, and that may also be one of the reason why we are seeing so many gut issues coming up? What is your take on this?
I think what you say is specifically to the spice or what we call as the chili aspect of it.
Correct.
People tend
Correct.
to like that taste, and yes, most people who want to make food tasty, they believe that if it becomes very spicy in that sense, then it'll be very tasty, and they put a lot of oil also in that to basically improve
Correct.
the palatability of the food.
Correct.
Now,
Correct.
definitely that's not a good aspect at all. That's not what I meant by adding spices at all. I
Correct.
meant it in small quantities, which are added to, of course, add the flavor to the food. If you're going to overdo them, anything, it's like it's any
Moderation
too
is the
much of
key.
anything is poison, right? So
Correct.
same with the spices. If you're going to overdo it, that itself will become the cause of digestive issues for sure. Something like what we call a
Correct.
gastric irritation or an acid reflux or causing esophagitis. So many cases
Correct.
which we see start off with people having too many extra
Outside food.
spices in their food. Yes, and that
Pani puri
leads to this.
and eating from outside and use.
Yes.
Okay, so now a very, very popular question that we all have been dealing since childhood. So all our grandmothers used to say, the days when there was non-veg in the diet, don't take, milk, or there were certain things that we were always talked about. When we talk about the Viruddhahar, like milk and banana should not be taken together. But then you see so many smoothies and shakes, and with the culinary sciences, you see so many recipes coming up, mixing anything together. And then, there are certain Ayurvedic text which says that there will be certain diseased conditions, skin diseases, and all. So, please help us with your, expertise to understand the Viruddhahar better.
So I think doing introduction to Ayurveda dietetics and advanced Ayurveda dietetics, one of the most popular topics which come up is Viruddha
Correct.
Ahara. The minute
Correct.
we start that topic, people have so many questions, and I think that's
And that
beautiful.
was the reason
The
I wanted to join Ayurvedic dietetics course, because of the rest, everything we could just make. But this was something that we were seeing in the modern dietetics as well as in the Ayurveda. It was quite contrary. So please simplify it for us.
So, Viruddha Ahara is a topic, as you would know in itself. There are 18 subtypes of Viruddha Ahara, but the
Correct.
concept is very, very simple. So, if you have you have two ingredients by themselves, they are very, very healthy. For example, if you have honey and you have ghee, by themselves, they are very, very healthy. But the problem is when you combine them, then that becomes an issue. So the concept of Viruddha Ahara is to basically say that when you combine two ingredients, they can become incompatible in nature. And
Correct.
Viruddha Ahara never says that you have it once in a way. Okay, once you're traveling somewhere and you really see this fresh strawberries which are there, and therefore you want to taste that strawberry milkshake. So you have that, you're not going to get diseased immediately. Not at all. The concept
Correct.
of Viruddha is where over a period of time, when you're doing this daily, every day, as a regular thing, that is going to lead to imbalances within the system, primarily affecting the digestive process, and in the long run that can lead to many, many diseases. And we are seeing that specifically in relationship to diseases of the gut, in diseases of the skin, even many, many diseases, but specifically in skin and gut, when we remove many of what we call as these incompatible combinations, we see a huge difference, right? And so the whole thing is that if you have a fantastic digestion, you're doing a lot of working out, your exercise routine is fantastic, and you're healthy, then once in a way, even if you indulge in a Viruddha Ahara, there's no problem. And the major Viruddha Ahara, which most people tend to do, is to want to have a meal in a single glass. It makes it easier. They're like, we cannot
Correct.
make one, three, four dishes, etc. And I understand that. So for simplicity, they would prefer to put it all in one glass and drink it. Right now,
Correct.
the problem about this is you're just including various sources of food which may not even ideally go together. For example, in a smoothie, there will be milk, which is, of course, the protein or the base in which it is happening. Nowadays, people have changed it maybe to curd, right? Then you're
Mhm.
putting fruits in it, which are also very heavy on digestion. Then you're putting something like, oh, we need the green leafy component in it, so we need to put some
Palak.
I don't know, spinach leaves, yeah,
Spinach.
kale or spinach leaves in that. And then after that, they're like, now we also need to, if when in Ayurveda we talk about Chadrasa Ahara, they'll be like, okay, we need an astringent component to it, so we'll put some matcha powder in it. So the thing is
Mhm.
that it seems very easy, and it's a very easy way for you to drink that. You don't even realize the amount of calories that are going into you. But the point
Correct.
is that it is very, very heavy on digestion. Like today, as a
Correct.
matter of fact, I had a patient who was telling me that for the past 2 weeks, I thought I was losing a little bit of weight. So I started having this dry fruit milkshake with banana every day. And
Mhm.
uh, 2 weeks down the line, now I'm experiencing a lot of distension, bloating. I'm feeling very uncomfortable. I'm having a lot of back pain, etc., etc. So she says, she just, because she's known me for some time, she said, is it because I started that milkshake? I was like, if you relate it that way, obviously that is something which is very heavy on digestion, and it has not digested properly, so probably it imbalanced the doshas. And even a small trigger like having like a salad or something has caused her vata dosha in that case to increase,
Correct.
right? So it is very, I mean, a person who is going to the gym may not face it so easily because they are working out and kind of digesting that heavy meal which they are having. But it is important to be careful and not really overindulge on these incompatible combinations, because over a period of time we have seen they lead to a lot of complications.
So we just got a question from the audience that if leafy vegetables can be, mixed with buttermilk, will that be fine or not?
Leafy vegetables with buttermilk. See, the thing is, buttermilk is the lightest form. Now, most people here again, when we talk about buttermilk, that's a topic in itself. But
Correct.
to very quickly say, usually when we talk about buttermilk, people are talking about diluted curd. So, with
Correct.
diluted curd, yes, I would not suggest having green leafy vegetables because they both tend to increase the kapha a little more. So, that
Correct.
way, I would not suggest it. Buttermilk is, I mean, if you're talking about like making like a palak kadhi, or where you're cooking the green leafy vegetable in that, that
Mhm.
I know is a specialty dish which people enjoy once in a way. So that's not the viruddha which we are talking about in specific to, the heavy food which you're mixing in a milk. So most cases viruddha ahara, especially with milk, milk is a food in itself. It's very very heavy
Correct.
on digestion. So anything which you're adding into that is like making it triple heavy on digestion. It's like having a meal of moong dal halwa with fried things and jalebis and everything all together. So just thinking about that, you're like, oh my God, my system cannot take this. That we just don't see it, but all of that is in that class.
And also oxalates present in the leafy vegetables like palak and stuff will interfere in the calcium absorption in milk, or so that again is a contrary. So that, like, palak paneer is one of the most favy North Indian dish, which is very popular, mostly prepared and ordered in the restaurants, which should not be the case. So definitely, yeah, I think the audience has got the answer. Now next is the Agni and Ama, which is like one of the burning topics I think today we hear. And I remember when I started, like 18, 19 years back, when I started my practice, there were certain diseases which we only studied in our textbook, just quite a few, a paragraph hardly to write in the exam. And we hardly used to, very few people used to come with, IBS or IBD, PCOD and stuff. But when now we see so many gut issues coming in. So and then there is a lot of mental health, as you rightly said, that gut brain axis. So what is, the role of Agni and Ama, like the way the spices and other food components, and the when we say that, one person who's healthy should be, all these things should be tick tick tick. So in that, I think the primary is your digestion. You always start with the digestion. So what is your take on, or what is your advice on improving the digestion, or the role of this Agni and Ama in gut issues?
So I would say definitely Agni is integral. A well functioning Agni is integral to health. As you correctly said, the other characteristics which I talked about, of even as part of Panchakarma, where we talked about,
Mhm.
a person feeling energetic, light, happy, feels amazing within themselves, within their skin, that
Mhm.
comes with a well functioning Agni. So that's why Panchakarma becomes so much more difficult. It's not the process itself that's the problem. And I'm
Correct.
surprised to say this, and I would say a little sad to say this, but most people are willing to go, have take the medication and go lose stools, maybe even 15 to 20 times. They're absolutely fine with that. But after
Mhm.
that, when I tell them they need to be on the kanji diet, that's when the issues begin. So now I
Correct.
start with, are you willing to go on the diet? Then only I will do the Panchakarma therapy, right? So the point is now, I think our tongue is, I'm not saying that it's not true for me also. I love certain things
Correct.
and I
Correct.
would definitely
Absolutely.
indulge on that. Correct. So the thing is, when we are so dependent, or we want to have all of these different foods, tastes, we want to experience all these different things, etc., there are a lot more processed foods, there are a lot more heavier foods which we are eating, and in comparison to that, the amount of physical activity, etc., which we are doing is definitely lesser, right? So I remember
Correct.
when my grandmother, her meal was rice. There was nothing other than rice. They could not afford the kind of vegetables or salads which we had. She used to have
Correct.
a little bit, but her
Correct.
majority was rice and dal. I mean, rice and rasam or rice and sambar. And they used to have a
Sound.
three-course meal every day, which was
Correct.
sambar, rasam, and curd. And she was absolutely healthy till 96. But the reason
Correct.
was at that time, for her, her primary mode of transport was walking. She did not get
Correct.
on to a scooter or even a bus for that matter because of lack of monetary this ones. And she used to walk. And that probably kept her going. And even we didn't have the facilities which we have today of, using a
Yeah.
mixie for making a chutney. She actually had to like grind it. Even the buttermilk she used to, it takes a
Correct.
lot of time to
Churn.
do that. And she did it. So that kind of energy utilization of being
Physical
a stay at
activity.
home mom, not going to a gym, but that amount of energy utilization helped her digest the food which she did. But nowadays, what do we do?
Absolutely.
It's like insta stage, right? Like everything is instant, everything has to be at
Correct.
your doorstep. Why do you need to move out? And that is leading to us overeating for the sake of wanting to
I
eat, not necessarily because we need to, and
know.
not being equating that with the energy expenditure which we're doing. Like it's a very simple concept which you would also know: energy in, energy
I
out,
yeah.
right? So here,
Energy out. Yes. Yes.
so energy in here is like 10 times more than energy out. So that,
Correct.
I think, has become the major basis of what we call as lifestyle disorders also, because the
Correct.
sedentary nature of our livelihoods now has itself affected our digestive processes.
I think I
And
used to
is
walk half a kilometer to catch my bus, and now kids are getting right in front of their lift in the apartment. So inside the big apartments, also the buses go. So, and we have A to Z, all the food processor and dishwashers and vacuum cleaners, everything. So we hardly do any physical activity unless we go to the gym. So you very rightly said that makes a big difference.
And I think that itself is one of the major causes for so many digestive issues, because it's as simple as you're eating a very, very heavy meal, and then you're not okay. Mentally, you're doing a lot of work, but physically, you may not be doing it. And that, I feel, is one of the major reasons as to why a person's gut starts getting affected. In teenage, not so much, probably because the kind of growth metabolism they have is much higher. It happens
Correct.
mostly once you enter your 30s. People joke about it. They're like, oh, the minute I hit 30, I can see the cake which I'm eating directly going to my waist. Why is that?
Correct.
The metabolism changed, and probably you
Change.
need a little help there, right?
Correct, correct. Very true, very true. Okay, so the next question is I think we have already done this, but I just would like to understand if you have anything to add upon the plant-based diet.
So that I didn't talk about in detail, of course. So meat is, first of all, as you've correctly said, that the myth which is there is Ayurveda's against non-vegetarian food and meats, and that is not at all true. See, Ayurveda is a life science that utilized all available resources which were there, and that obviously included meats too. So there are specific disease conditions for which they used meats as a form of therapy. Even now,
Correct,
we have certain
correct,
disease conditions in which we use meat as a form of therapy. Okay, so
correct.
it is not definitely prohibited. There is a whole section, and I must admit, one of the sections which I never understood because I was not a meat eater, so I had no clue why so much importance was based on that. But now I understand it as a practitioner, right? So there were subdivisions in that. We talked about every possible animal, like in water, sea water,
Mhm.
fresh water, animals that lived in caves, animals that lived on plants, which lived in burrows. So you can imagine the depth to which they had actually explained the properties of meat. Now,
Correct.
the thing is, when we are trying to recreate meat with a plant-based source, I'm sure you will have more inputs to give on the protein
Vegetarian.
aspects of it, and I will leave that to you.
Yeah.
Let me just talk about the properties aspect of it, right? So, when we talk about a plant based protein, the most common sources, especially of a vegan diet, which is where they are creating plant based meats, is
Correct.
they're using plant sources, which mostly will be soya or chickpea, etc. Now, naturally, the properties of a soya or chickpea cannot be compared to that of meat. In Ayurveda,
Correct.
particularly, chickpea is something which is highly vatakarak, while
Mm.
meat almost all types of meat balance the vata dosha. So when you
Mhm.
are saying, okay, let me make it look like meat and just add all of these aspects into it, it is not
Correct.
going to have the same benefit on you. It is going to
Correct.
be heavier on digestion. Meat itself is heavy on digestion. This is going to
Correct.
be heavier. It's going to
Mhm.
be highly processed because that's the nature of plant based meats which they are making. They're from sources which are naturally vata karak. They're going to increase the vata in you. The process involves a lot of fermentation, which increases the pitta. So here, meats also increase pitta if you see that. But
Correct.
the point is that the nature or the outside look of it, the feel of it may be the same. This I have experienced by mistake. I happened to have a vegetarian sausage, and I must honestly tell you, I hated the texture and the form, and I was like, why am I having this? But
Correct.
I realized that it's supposed to recreate the sensation which you have in an actual sausage, right? So
Correct.
for that, they've probably done 100% and a fantastic job. But whether that protein in your sense would be bioavailable is one thing which you can definitely comment
Mhm.
on. But definitely in Ayurveda, it is something which is going to imbalance the vata as well as the pitta dosha, which would not happen if you actually had the meat itself.
Correct. And to add to it, when you do the so much of processing of the same food, that the boiled chickpeas, the nutritional level, and when you're doing so much of processing, again you're adding, subtracting so many things. So it becomes matlab, it has to be like what is the requirement of an individual. If someone really want to have vegan or something, so definitely it's a better choice than the meat. But there are so many other ways wherein you can just make a chickpea ka hummus, or you can make chickpea tikkis, or you can make a chole, and so many other ways of making it in order to make it more palatable. And definitely more the processing, we are just destroying the nutrition, nothing else. So coming to the last, like as we stay in Bangalore, a lot of club culture here, and we see that now alcohol has become a very integral part of everyone. And as we know that alcohol consumption is known to disturb the body's homeostasis and can aggravate the doshas, and can also destroy the ojas. So throw some light through the Ayurvedic point of view, how exactly one should take, not take, according to the Ayurvedic perspective.
Okay, so let me first say what is ojas and alcohol in relationship to that, because you've put them both on the slide. And then I'll definitely talk about what Ayurveda says about alcohol. So, ojas, for those of you who may not be familiar with that term, it basically is considered to be the essence of the tissues which are formed in our body. And that is considered as our life force, something which acts as the vitality, energy component in our body. So that is completely dependent upon the food which we eat, our agni, and how well we assimilate and digest the food. And in the process, the ojas is formed right at the end of the metabolism. Now, surprisingly, the properties, there are 10 properties of ojas which are explained, and then there are 10 properties of alcohol which are explained, and they are exactly opposite, right? So, the interesting thing is both of them have a mild sweet taste, yes, right? But otherwise, the properties which are supportive to the body and alcohol, which is the exact opposite, are where we are comparing here. So, in that
Correct.
way, when we look at alcohol, it obviously seems like a very negative thing. And I agree, there are many, many disease conditions which come up with the inclusion of too much alcohol in your system, right? But that does not mean, this is again a myth. Ayurveda is not against alcohol. Many of our medications itself are preparations which are fermented liquids, and they contain some quantity of alcohol in them. Not obviously very, very high percentage, but what we call as asavam arishtams are some form of alcoholic preparations, naturally fermented processes which we use. So there are certain advantages of medicated alcohols which we use, which one primary thing is it is excellent for improving the digestion as compared to any other form, a pill, a powder, a kashayam. The alcoholic preparation is something which is like three times more beneficial. It can improve your digestion
So
almost
many.
immediately. So that is
because of
one
the
advantage of it. Huh?
fermentation and the process of how the alcohol is produced. So
Exactly. So it is something which, in a smaller quantity, depending upon the individual, again, it is highly pitta karak. It is something which will increase the pitta very, very highly. So, in a person who has a pitta imbalance, surely I would not give it. And here again, the alcohol which I'm talking about is what is explained in the classical text, not equivalent to what we get now, because now we
correct.
put a lot of additional substances again in it. So this was using jaggery as a form of fermentation, sugar as a form of fermentation. And the smell would not be the greatest, which is probably why people would not have those kinds of alcohols now. But one similar natured substance which we do get now, of course, is wine. The wine, the grape wine, which you get, that
Mhm.
has been explained, and that is not as processed because it's like naturally fermented, etc., using the sugar in that itself. So that kind of, and that's an acquired taste. Not everyone likes wine, right? And the
Correct.
reason for that is because that fermentation process is the one that has the benefits. The taste,
Correct.
it has five tastes except salt, and it is something which stimulates the digestion. It has a mild laxative quality. It is diuretic in nature. It is something which can actually improve your sleep if you have it in smaller quantities. It has the ability to act as an aphrodisiac if you have it in the right way. So there are many, many benefits to alcohol, but there again, it depends on which type of alcohol you have it, how you have it, and in what quantity you have. That's the most important. If you
Moderation
have
is
it in
again
like
the
a
key. Should not People should not
exactly,
take
absolutely.
this session as if we are promoting any kind of alcohol. So, disclaimer.
Yes. Not at all. It is just that it is beneficial if used in the right way, the right time, and the right type. Obviously,
Correct.
if it is too much, will have negative effects and it is going to harm the body very, very badly. There is a disease condition which they talk about, which we correlate to alcoholism, which talks about when you have it, what are all the negative effects that can have, and it will
Correct.
affect the body functions, the mental functions, because it is something which causes a sense of what they say as confusion in the mind, and therefore one needs to be very careful how you use it. But in the underlying sense, if you use it in moderation in the right way, it does have its benefits also.
And right source.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Dr. Madhumita. I think it was a very, very delightful, and a lot of my myths has also been, solved. So many of the questions also were like, even I had quite a few confusions. So I'm very sure that people must have got the insight of it. If there is any other question from the social media like YouTube and Facebook, else we were there to close the session. Thank you very much for taking time out. I think it is a Dhanteras and everybody is, and for you also picking your daughter and then getting on time. Thank you very much. Thanks for your time and all the knowledge sharing. Looking forward for more sessions.
Yeah, thank you so much for the opportunity. As I mentioned, having the opportunity to do this on Ayurveda Day, something fantastic.
Correct.
And I think this is the future where we are seeing people are trying to understand how we can integrate different concepts, how we can bust many of these myths which come up. So definitely something to look forward to. And I think if people, as we go along, we will see more questions with regards to specific aspects which come up in Ayurveda. And I'm sure as a team, we can address those in the future.
Definitely, definitely. Looking forward. Okay. Thank you very much. Happy Diwali. Take care.
Happy Deepavali to
Have a
you
great
and everybody.
Deepavali.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
too.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Take care. Bye.